Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast. Now going to be talking about the series between the Indiana Pacers and the New York Knicks as we saw them tie it up over the weekend. It seemed like the Knicks had a great chance to really take control of this series on Friday. They were playing a close one against the Pacers. Tie game with 30 seconds left, and Andrew Nembhard hit an unbelievable shot. Now, definitely feels like a letdown spot here for the Knicks because on one hand, absolutely, that type of a shot from Nembhard is a 1 in 20 shot to actually fall. But even still, they had actually forced a stop right prior to that. Tyrese Halliburton missed a three-pointer. It was Aaron Nesmith grabbing the offensive rebound. Definitely going to be giving Nesmith his flowers later in this segment. But then they reset. Tyrese faces the double team. It was great to see his level of aggression over the weekend, sort of returning to that version of himself that we saw during the play-in tournament in the fall, but he makes the right read in this situation as the Knicks send the double team. He finds Nembhard, and again, just an unbelievable shot. And in a vacuum, Knicks fans sort of have to feel like, well, if that's how we're going to lose, then so be it. They played a great game, both of these teams, but if that's the shot that's going to fall, kind of hard to really get mad at that. But the issue is, for the Knicks, the longer this series goes on, the harder it's going to be for them, considering they are juggling all of these different injuries, and there is absolutely a fatigue factor that's setting in, which is what we saw on Sunday afternoon, where they were just wiped off of the floor. And it's in large part, I think, due to the fact that we are definitely seeing tired legs with this Knicks team. Jalen Brunson, who continues to fight through whatever this foot injury is. We've seen him sort of hobbling around at times. It just seemed like on a lot of these layup attempts, we're seeing him finish short and not be able to actually, finish around the rim like he was. I feel like even if you go back to Friday as well, after Nembhard hits that three-pointer to go ahead, on the other end, it seemed like Brunson was sort of trying to let the refs dictate the game a little bit, where he tried to bait the Pacers into a foul on a three-point shot, just ended up in a horrendous miss, and the Pacers were able to close it out from there. Now, if you're Brunson, maybe there's some sort of thought process that the Pacers could potentially be trying to foul. They were up 3, but with just a few seconds left. We have seen this before where obviously other teams, they foul to avoid a three-pointer even being allowed to be made, and the Pacers don't have a great defense, so maybe that was the thought process there, but haven't heard anything from Tibbs or Brunson that was the case. Brunson just sort of owned up to it and said that he needs to be better. It was definitely a disappointing moment for Brunson, who we know how great he is. Don't have to lean on the refs in this situation, but there's also a real chance that there is a fatigue part of it that is set into this because he's been playing 40 minutes per game in these playoffs so far, and at the end of this game, maybe he's just tired, and that is a little bit of the result. Now, Dante DiVincenzo, you got an unbelievable game from him in this situation, so I'm definitely not defending Brunson in this instant. I'm just sort of trying to at least, explain why this could have happened, because it seemed like this was the game where the Knicks were really trying to steal it, take a commanding lead in the series, and be able to at least, I wouldn't say coast, because the Pacers are a team that weren't ever going to go away without a fight, but maybe at least sort of be able to rest their players a little bit more down the stretch of this series. I'm sure that Tibbs does not care whatsoever about what the media is saying in terms of the playing time that he's dishing out in these series, but with all of these injuries catching up to them, it is absolutely a story surrounding the team. And we have seen just the way that, at any given moment in that Game 4 matchup, there was a player on the court for the Knicks who was out of the rotation, essentially, in game one, where Alec Burks, who's actually been giving them some decent scoring minutes now, obviously Tibbs knows more about what goes on behind the scenes in that Knicks situation. I have some Knicks fans in my life and said that defensively, Burks was just terrible for the Knicks right after the trade deadline, but he was carrying, I think I touched on this before the weekend as well, that I didn't like how often Burks was being the aggressor when he was playing for the Pistons earlier this year. I thought that he was maybe getting in the way a little bit of the development of some of their younger players, but he was playing pretty well, and the fact that he couldn't give any sort of minutes for this stretch of time, feels like, and, again, Tibbs knows better than anybody, but it feels like an instance where they could have at least played with it a little bit more. Now, granted, Deuce McBride was coming along as well, but this is a team that's been running these 7-man rotations pretty much the entirety of the postseason so far, and now with all of these injuries catching up to them, it's a little bit retroactive, but we're talking about all of these injuries. OG Anunoby has never been a player that has had great durability, and he's playing, again, 40 minutes per game in the postseason. Just not a great sign. The updates also don't seem great for him either. He, of course, we knew he was out for Game 3, knew that he was doubtful for Game 4. He doesn't end up playing, and the fact that we haven't heard any sort of positive update yet is a little bit of a concern for the Knicks. But like I mentioned, to the point of what their rotations look like now, you have Precious Achiuwa starting the game on Saturday and Sunday. Now, minutes-wise, got 22 on Friday, and it was, I believe, 24 on Sunday. Now, granted, blowout game in that one anyways, so it's not like any of the starters got ton of runtime, which I will say I do think was almost better for the Knicks, that if they were going to lose this game, the fact that it was such a, smacking was a good thing for the Knicks, so that Tibbs wasn't going to try and force the issue, play their players those extra minutes. DiVincenzo was the game high for the Knicks. He and actually Deuce McBride as well, both at 32 minutes, but the fact that their players were maybe able to get a little bit more rest and, headed back home into Game 5, where it seems like this is the real turning point for the series. I worry about the Knicks in terms of this series as a whole. I said that I think people are overlooking especially the depth of the Pacers, and we've seen the way that they have been able to apply the pressure on the Knicks, and there have been some instances where they have been able to run the entire court and get some good looks. Josh Hart in particular has been great at that, but at the same time, it's playing into the Pacers, bigger umbrella strategy of trying to wear down the Knicks as they're already playing all of these minutes. And, I feel like at this point, I actually want to look at what the series odds are at this point, because of the fact that I feel like it's probably leaning in favor of the Pacers, the way that the momentum has sort of shifted. Now, I'm definitely not ruling out the Knicks by any means in this situation, but I feel like I always had this kind of gut feeling about the Pacers, and again, definitely cannot overreact to any one game in particular. But yeah, the Pacers have officially taken the series odds at -120. So feel like it's going to be, ultimately for the Knicks here, I think that the reality of the situation is this run has been incredibly fun, but I don't feel like this was the season for them, given all the injuries in the first place. And I keep referencing this, but when they traded for OG Anunoby at the deadline, and I do think that big picture here, Tibbs absolutely does need to consider the usage of him, considering he hasn't been somebody who has been extremely durable, that he is a championship caliber piece, but they need a second scorer. And I know Knicks fans I feel like Knicks fans and Julius Randle have a very bipolar relationship, where the highs are really good for Julius Randle, but there is also a frustration level with him as well. And maybe Randall is in theory, like, he absolutely, and I've had this argument with some of my friends as well, that the Knicks are a better team today with Julius Randle, without a doubt, in my eyes. They need a second scorer, and they've gotten massive production from Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart, which is huge for them. But in terms of ball in his hands, is he going to go get a bucket? I think they need Julius Randle. It's very similar to the conversation about the Heat last year in my eyes, where they go on this run without Tyler Hero, and everybody is saying, oh, well, because of the ball movement and, less ball stoppage, that they are better without him. There are aspects of that could be true, but at the end of the day, the NBA is about scoring, getting buckets, and that's what both Julius Randle and Tyler Hero, to whatever degree, and obviously the extracurriculars with both of them to some degree, are concerns. They're not perfect players, but they would both make their teams better in a playoff series, and I'm not sure how the Knicks are going to choose to operate in this offseason in regards to Julius Randle. I feel like he could potentially be a trade chip to try and get a more legit number two. Now, obviously, there's been some Devin Booker smoke. Donovan Mitchell has been talked about for years now, it seems like. Not totally sure, but I don't think that this was ever really the year for the Knicks to win the finals, but they are continuing to build something up here. They're going to continue to try here, and like I said, I'm absolutely not counting them out in terms of this series against the Pacers, but I never felt great about it, and I think that, again, the fact that the Pacers were able to take both of those games, this is only going to continue to be a harder series for the Knicks as it goes on, and let alone the idea of how that will further impact their postseason run if they were to go on to face the Boston Celtics potentially. But let me know in the comments section what you think about this series, what your expectations are. But we are now going to be taking our second break, and when we come back on the other side, I want to dive into the continued development of Kyrie Irving, the leader of this Dallas Mavericks team, whether he is somebody that there are other teams in the league that could be sort of kicking themselves for not taking a swing at during this past offseason when he was a free agent, as the Dallas Mavericks take a 2-1 series lead over the Oklahoma City Thunder. So stick with us, and we will be right back.